Hello, Angels. Today, I want to talk about two artists. The first of which is Kathleen Hanna. Kathleen Hanna is one of those musical artists that either you've never heard of her or you have really, really strong feelings on her. And though she was involved in various punk zines and occasional non-musical projects, she is primarily known as the founder of girl punk Riot girl band Bikini Kill. In fact, it's difficult for almost any one person to be as synonymous with a specific genre as Kathleen Hanna is with Riot Grrrl. This whole movement centered around introducing women into the historically male-dominated punk scene is one whose roots we are continuing to feel to this day. And I like Bikini Kill quite a bit, and always have. They were a real treat for me as I was discovering music myself and sort of reverse engineering some of the punk and hardcore bands I was really into at the time, like Gloss or Priests. My personal favorite track of theirs has remained the song Carnival.
Do you guys like carnivals?
Maybe a slightly underrated, but still pretty well acknowledged, crazy Riot Grrrl Bikini Kill era defying song. But Kathleen Hanna's musical legacy is hardly limited to one band. In fact, she kind of feels like she has her hands in goddamn everything. She's like a 90s hardcore and alternative version of Brian Eno. Her story reads like a fucking musical Forrest Gump. She's married to a Beastie Boy. Bikini Kill music has been produced by Ian MacKaye of Fugazi and Minor Threat, as well as Joan Jett, and she's the reason that Smells Like Teen Spirit is called Smells Like Teen Spirit. Actually, just a few weeks before I started working on this video that you're watching right now, another channel, Ding Ding Ding, that I like quite a bit, made a longer, really good, really fun, really informative video about Kathleen Hanna. Check out Ray's video and honestly a bunch of the other shit that she's done because she's pretty cool. Like a lot of punk bands, Bikini Kill's time was short-lived. They flamed out pretty quickly, but Kathleen Hanna was not done. And it was at this point that she formed her second band and the second major slice of her musical legacy, Tigre. Now, Tigre took an approach that interpreted some more electronic and dance music-oriented styles into that punk ethos and kind of developed a really beloved legacy all their own, highlighted by a still iconic debut album. While in the decades since then, Kathleen Hanna has been subject to a minor controversy or two, and a lot of her movement is still tied up in the oft controversial politics of third-wave feminism. Kathleen herself seems like a pretty obvious musical icon. And despite the popularity of Riot Grrrl as a genre, as a scene, being tied really directly to a response to an almost entirely male punk scene, the genre and the music that came out of it has had a surprisingly long shelf life, and even a few years ago had kind of a revivalist moment on TikTok. More so than any Bikini Kill song, though, the biggest beneficiary of renewed interest in Kathleen Hanna's back catalog on places like TikTok was actually the Tigre song Decepticon.
See you later. See you later.
And if you know this song and you're closer to my age than Kathleen Hanna's age, there's a pretty good chance that you first heard it on a TikTok, some weird snippet from this very playful, very tongue-in-cheek, extremely infectious song that, sure, it may not be exactly representative of her body of work, but it is an excellent showing of her creativity, and a song that I am not surprised is getting a huge second renaissance. It kicks ass. The second artist that I want to talk about today is Halsey. Hello, Angels. My name is Lavender. Welcome to a video essay that I've been working on and promising for far too long. There wasn't really a good place to slip this intro in because I kind of just hit the ground running, so it's going here. Halsey is actually kind of one of the more interesting to talk about pop artists of the last decade or so. And now I'm saying to talk about, if you'll put your opinions on Halsey's music aside for a second, her creative and artistic journey is one that is kind of interesting as she sort of emerged and cut her teeth in this post-Lord Royals landscape of pop music where things were a lot more down to earth rather than the extravagance and the bombast of the decade in pop that had preceded it. And it was a style that Halsey embodied quite well before turning around and completely blowing it up immediately with collaborations like the Chainsmokers, BTS, Benny Blanco, and that eventually led to a third album that is, and I'm sorry Halsey fans, one of the worst fucking things I've ever had to review. 'Cause you can't love nothing unless there's something in it for you. Oh, I feel so sorry. I feel so sad. And throughout that time, she actually established herself as one of the biggest and most high-profile members of the LGBT community among pop singers and pop stars, going by they them, having a little non-binary era for a little bit and continuing to this day to be openly bisexual. In 2021 she had a child and then released a concept album about sort of motherhood, and it's produced by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross of fucking Nine Inch Nails. That is not a joke, by the way. Nine Inch Nails actually produced that album, so if you clicked your brain off as soon as I stopped talking about Kathleen Hanna and rushed back into focus when I said the words Nine Inch Nails, yes, this Halsey album, I reviewed it, I would know, has production from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. And finally, it was just last year that she switched labels for the first time in her huge hit-making career and released this new album, Great Impersonator, which was extremely vulnerable, even in the sense that it revealed details to her fans and to the public that she had never confessed before, though admittedly it was met with mixed reception and reviews from fans and critics, myself included. Halsey's artistic evolution is kind of legitimately interesting to talk about for fans and followers of pop music. And if you're not a fan or a follower of pop music, that may surprise you, but I hope I've done a decent enough job conveying just how much change and evolution has happened to Halsey within the past decade, and all while in this huge spotlight. It's a really interesting thing to talk about, despite the fact that, personally, I don't really care for any of her music. We are the new Americana. I was right there for Halsey's original breakthrough, and it was exactly as cringe at the time as it feels now in retrospect. Trust me. And on her second album, even though I have a big soft spot for the song Strangers, I wouldn't call this a great pop record or even a good pop record if we're being honest. Even her Nine Inch Nails produced fourth album, I feel like, is just hit or miss, frankly. And songs that I do like of hers, like Whispers, still don't hold a candle to most of her contemporaries. And I genuinely really don't mean all of that in an offensive way. I don't want Halsey fans swarming me or anything. Honestly, it's kind of a testament, almost impressive, that she has managed to keep my fascination and my attention in tow for a decade while making less than a dozen songs that I would ever really want to hear again. That's amazing. Nobody gives a shit about Ava Max or BB Rexa or a million other pop star girls that have faded out and you've forgotten about completely in just the time that Halsey's been a hitmaker. This is my fight song. No, I don't wanna sit still, look pretty. No scars, see you're beautiful. But I made you look. I made you look. Oh, just kidding. I wish I could forget about Meghan Trainor. Anyway, less than a year after Great Impersonator, Halsey is back once again with a new single that she dropped around 2 months ago, coincidentally around the time that I started working on this video. And on her new single, safe to say she is breaking some new ground. Halsey's getting kinky with it. Yeah, the song's called Safeword. It's got all of this BDSM and kink imagery, which, and this is not the point, just as a side note, if we're judging this thing as a coherent piece of BDSM and kink art, it's slop. She kind of like switches between dom and sub throughout the entire music video and even a little bit throughout the song. Like, she starts off as this dominatrix lady, and she's got a little dog boy, and then he's a little foot boy, and then he's a little maid boy. At the end, he's a little furniture boy. This is all absolutely awesome, by the way. No notes. But other parts of the video, she's like an impact sub, being like restrained and spanked. I don't think the vision of this was to tell a coherent kink narrative, but if it was, they failed. And if you're familiar with my digital footprint, let's just say I know what I'm talking about. So this is Safeword, the new Halsey song. New-ish. And like, come on. You hear it, right? A full decade into her career, Halsey is making this grand stylistic change, and what she is evolving into is functionally a Kathleen Hanna ripoff. So here's the question that kept me up at night, and still does. Why do I kind of like it anyway? I'll put my cards on the table right now. I like this song, and I like this video too. I don't think it's the greatest thing I've ever heard. It's probably not going to make my best songs of the year list, but is it a top 5 Halsey song in my opinion? Easily. Maybe top 3. I've always thought Halsey's grittier vocals were one of her strengths that she doesn't really lean into enough, and it's all over this track, especially as she switches back and forth. She kind of does the vocal jumps in demeanor and intensity throughout this record. You know, like Kathleen Hanna did. I also think it's actually kind of charming that this thing is so imprecise in its BDSM imagery, because, like, come on, it's Halsey. Arguably, it would feel weirder and more out of place if she did tell a really informed and articulate BDSM narrative. I am not even sure that would feel right. So, yeah, it doesn't really bother me. I can fully admit that this is a ripoff. Frankly, it's blatant, and I'm far from the first person to notice or call her out on it. Why do I kind of like it anyway? Why doesn't it bother me? Because hating ripoffs is what music critics are here to do. It's one of the most common complaints amongst music critics. We arrive to make a quality judgment of new music, and part of being a music critic is being informed, knowledgeable, understanding where something exists within the greater artistic span, and when it is functionally copycat work, that tends to really piss music critics off. But at points in time in my career doing this, I've let some things slide that other people haven't. Here's 2 examples. On my self-plug 2023 Best Hits of the Year video, I included on the list this really beautiful country song that I still like quite a bit called Watermelon Moonshine by Lainey Wilson. This very, very touching, childish, nostalgic retrospection on Lainey losing her virginity drinking watermelon moonshine.
Drinking watermelon moonshine, cut the barn with a little light.
I think she does a really good job at preserving the youthful spontaneity and magic of all of it, while also sort of understanding in retrospect how naive she was and how far she has come and how much she's grown ever since. I think it's a really beautiful song. But if you know anything about country music and chart watching, you probably know there's a lot of people that hate this song, and for what is almost objectively a good reason. One of the most beloved country songs of the last 40 years is Deanna Carter's Strawberry Wine, a song about losing your virginity because you got drunk on fruity alcohol.
Like strawberry wine, say
But to be honest, when I hear the authentic, touching push and pull of Watermelon Moonshine, that doesn't really bother me. Another example, more on the thematic end, I kind of enjoy the only good Dominic Fike song, Vampires, despite the fact that its thematic framing, its narrative, and its story is all a total ripoff of the only good Sir Baby Girl song, Haunted House.
Everyone at this party's vampire. It's a vampire. This party's just another haunted house. I can't wait to lose all my friends tomorrow.
Honestly, I didn't really get a ton of backlash on the internet for either of these choices. In fact, it was mostly my friends in real life who also like music and pay attention to my work that were upset about shit like this. But it should piss me off, right? It should upset me. I should hate this. You know what I do hate? Greta Van Fleet. One of the biggest rock controversies of the past decade came when these fucking hacks emerged and started to get a lot of attention for their music, despite the fact that they were so blatantly, so obviously ripping off the sound, style, themes, and aesthetic of Led Zeppelin while bringing nothing original to the table. The backlash against Greta Van Fleet was huge, and I was right fucking there. I hated these guys. Still do. But that kind of implores me to ask a question now. What is different about what they're doing than all of the other examples I cited? I think part of the reason I hated Greta Van Fleet was summed up in the word artless. And this is an imprecise point to make, and one that's highly subjective in a way I think a lot of people will disagree with. But to me, there was nothing artful about what Greta Van Fleet did. When I hear Lainey Wilson sing about losing her virginity, it seeps with authenticity. And I can't prove whether the stories she's telling are real or not. She may very well just be trying to rip off Strawberry Wine, but when she sings it, especially as the hooks get more swelling, more dramatic, more nostalgic, I feel every single word. And with Vampires even, I would say Dominic Fike updates the campy garishness of Sir Baby Girl's original into something much cooler, slicker, something that feels like it would fit in a lot more in the kind of parties that both songs are singing about. And in my opinion, that's an improvement. And I guess you could make the argument that in an attempt to upend her reputation and her style, Halsey is attempting to drag herself to some of Kathleen Hanna's most erotic artistic extremes. So Greta Van Fleet is no Led Zeppelin. Obviously. But, you know, Halsey is no Kathleen Hanna. Do any of these songs actually improve on what they're ripping off? I guess the authenticity of Watermelon Moonshine adds a sort of subtle supposition of self-reflection. I got a really beautiful comment on that video from a fan who believes that the song Strawberry Wine exists within the world of Watermelon Moonshine, something that doesn't really feel intentional when I'm reading the text, but seems really nice to imagine. But in large part, none of these copycats really do hit the stride of their original. I finished that part, everything that you've heard up until now, like 6 weeks ago, back when there was a chance that anyone would even still be talking about this Halsey song. And I put a pin in it, and I said, when I've figured out all of my thoughts on this, I'll come back and finish it and have a point. And wow, has that thought process taken me to a lot of different places, through a lot of staring at the ceiling in bed at night and conversations with fellow content creators and artists about this ripoff debate, this discussion of artlessness, repurposing, and I don't fucking know anything more than I did 6 weeks ago. The discussion has led me to think about Milli Vanilli and their now notorious lip syncing, David Guetta and his awful run of really obvious EDM slop samples that take 30 seconds to make, even the fact that two of the most promising K-pop groups of the last 5 years, 50/50 and New Jeans, are facing the potential of having all of their members replaced and carried on with the same logo and just new girls. All of that stuff is worth its own conversation, but it's also adjacent to what I'm trying to parse with all of this Kathleen Hanna Halsey shit. And to be honest, I haven't really arrived at anything even resembling coherent through this entire thought process. And I kept thinking, well, I'll have more conversations, I'll think about more angles and more reference points, and I'll post the video when it clicks. And when I can finish it, and when I know precisely why some of these blatant ripoffs don't bother me the way that they bother other music critics. And days turned to weeks, turned to months. And at some point, I guess you just have to call it. It would probably take me a lot longer to get this video done if I wanted to come out the other end with a perfect artistic conclusion, a roadmap of my personal, subjective opinions on what you have to do to something to make it no longer a ripoff worth scorn. But to that end, it also opens the door for me to ask anyone watching this a similar question. Pissed off Halsey fans, people who stumbled into this through looking through Kathleen Hanna videos and getting it recommended to them, or any of the other myriad of ways that you could end up watching this video. Do you hate this? Do you hate this Halsey song like I hate Greta Van Fleet? And to that end, why? I don't know. I've had 2 months, and it's more than enough proof to know that I'm not going to figure this out on my own. So if you have a take on it, you know where to put it. As is increasingly becoming basically the theme of this entire channel and all of the different kinds of videos I post to it, my name is Lavender, and this is the land of the anticlimax. Thank you for watching.
See you later. See you later.